back to State of the Nation. Data feeds still coming through on our social media platforms. To be part of the show, tweet at Gimbo Omar CTV. You can also use the hashtag State of the Nation. Suddenly, Nigeria assumes a broke status, or poor status, if you could call it that, months after it was declared the biggest economy in Africa. Economic analyst, petroleum engineer, and chartered accountant Zak Abala joins me on State of the Nation to look at the reasons why we are in this state, possibly how to get out of it as well. I want to thank you so much indeed for coming on State of the Nation. You probably heard or perhaps read of the status of Nigeria as being poor by Mr. President Muhammadu Buhari himself. Do you agree with the President's comments?
100%. The Nigerian economy is very, very weak. It is fragile. As I speak to you today, we are in actually a cancerous state. And if we continue with throwing political banters rather than coming together to look at economic and social solutions to this country, if we don't do that, I'm telling you, this current economy may likely metastasize into a malignant economy. And that will not be good for you, for me, and the entire country.
Does this statement, though, translate into a state of emergency, if you will, for countries such as, for organizations such as the DFID, the World Bank, for example, to look towards Nigeria with the aim of bringing in relief? Do you suppose this is right?
In moments like this, it's not because we are truly poor in terms of endowments of natural resources. That's where we're looking.
So the President may not be necessarily right.
No,
that's in context.
No, the President is 100% correct. But planlessness has gotten us to this state. Not even falling prices of crude oil. Because as I can tell you, it's not falling prices of crude oil that made us not to pass the PIB into law. It wasn't falling prices of crude oil that made us not to implement the Nigerian Gas Master Plan. It's not falling prices of crude oil that made us not to develop the ports of Port Harcourt, Warri, and Calabar. It wasn't falling prices of crude oil that made us not to deploy our ecological funds to take care of the erosion-ravaged sites, the flood sites, and even the desert encroachment. It was planlessness. And if it is planlessness, all we need to do is to embark on a deliberate movement to lock up the economy, hold it up, and see how we can bring ourselves out of the economic doldrums. Any attempt to continue to depend on foreign direct investment or stipends from outsiders will reduce us to a country of ridicule and melancholy.
Now, the indications are rife. A fall in Naira against the dollar, 16.5% inflation rate hitting the country, oil prices, as you just mentioned, down. In the center of the government's efforts is to diversify over 85% of the non-oil sector. The question now is, can diversification get us out of the situation that we're faced with?
100%. What you need to do as Nigeria, ordinarily should have been diversification. Being a monoproduct economy is not the reason why we are at this level.
But 85%, wouldn't you say that is rather too much to begin with?
No, we can achieve diversification. There are some countries that are only having gold. Some are only having timber. Some are having crude oil. Some are having gas. What you do is a deliberate method and embark on economic recovery mechanisms to bring your country out of the woods. In the case of Nigeria, we have situations where nobody can tell you whether we are sectorially deregulating the economy or commercializing the economy or privatizing the economy or liberalizing the economy. But unfortunately, every sector can be taken care of if you properly deploy any of these recovery mechanisms. Once we deploy the necessary mechanisms, we can bring Nigeria out of the woods. But continuous dependence on foreign direct investment will be risky. Why not think about local direct investment?
But the Vice President Osinbajo actually wants foreign direct investments to flow into the Nigerian economy. As a matter of fact, he was just speaking just yesterday and also said that he is looking forward to that to be the banks really lending to businesses.
With due respect,
Can the banks actually lend to businesses in an economy that is depressed, such as we are in?
this is where the question goes. And with due respect to His Excellency, the Vice President, if you don't create conducive environment, nobody will come into your country to contract. You did not pass the petroleum industry bill into law, and you expect people outside this country to come in and contract. It's not going to happen. If you have insecurity in the northeastern parts of the country, and you have investment of multinationals being destroyed in the southern part of the country, you are basically creating what we call business climate hostilities. If you don't show that the environment within your country will be conducive, if you don't create what we call the soil of peace within your country, nobody will come in to contract with you.
Let's talk about the Lake Chad Basin for its geology. Does that support the possibility of having crude oil in large quantities in that basin? And what do you suppose? First, state governments caught up within that region, Borno State, for example, how can they take advantage in an effort to diversify the economy?
First of all, let us look at crude oil or hydrocarbon or fossil fuel as national asset and national endowment. So if you look at it from that point, then you need to understand that Nigeria has 7 potential basins. The first one is the Calabar flank. Then you have the Benue Trough. Then you have the Chad Basin. Then you have the Sokoto Basin. Then you have the Anambra Basin. And you now have the Dahomey Basin, very close to Lagos, where you recently discovered crude oil in a field called Ajay Field, specifically oil mining lease number 113. Then the prolific Niger Delta basins. All these potential basins, if you look at them in national interest and as national assets, there will be nothing wrong in going to any potential basin to do what? To explore. Because what you are really looking at, you are looking at national assets for the entire country. And that does not mean you need to sectionalize it. If you discover and you get all these national assets, you are not also supposed to destroy or expend them. What you do at this point is to diversify the economy. Because if you look at places like the Middle East, they are sitting basically on oil. But go to United Arab Emirates, it is thriving on tourism. It is thriving on other things. Meanwhile, the crude oil and other things have been kept for the future generation. If you go to other monoproduct economies like Saudi Arabia, the way the country is being run, the management of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is different from Saudi Aramco. All they are doing is they are diversifying.
Well, the biggest challenge that region faces, everyone knows about that, is the insurgency from Nigeria to Chad and even extending further. The results has been migration from that region, and it's practically an empty place now.
Correct.
Do you suppose that the government can muscle out the kind of investments or the kind of attraction that will bring in investments?
You see, one thing we also need to accept as Nigerians is this. The calamities that will bedevil you in the northeastern parts of the country can bedevil you in the southern parts of the country or in the central parts of the country. So let us look at national calamities as national calamities and face them as a nation. But if we have national assets and we have national endowments, whatever mechanisms or strategies we need to deploy to take advantage of that national asset should be taken advantage of. The northeastern parts of the country is known basically principally for agriculture. But like we said, Chad Basin is as important as Sokoto Basin, as Benue Trough, as Anambra Basin, and the recent Dahomey Basin.
Economic analyst, petroleum engineer, and chartered accountant, Bala Zakabala, I want to thank you so much indeed. We'll try to stay with you still on the show as we also talk to Mohammed Bulama. He'll be talking to us from Borno State. You're watching State of the Nation at this time. Join us again in just a moment.